If you're listening to this podcast, I'm going to assume you're a fan of both Bachelor Party and or Jam Session. And if that is true, there's a new Spotify feature that lets you automatically follow the show. Tap the bell on the show page to get notified as soon as new episodes are released. So for Bachelor Party, that's Bachelor Party, and for Jam Session, that's Ring or Dish. By turning on new episode notifications, you'll also automatically start following the show. And if you aren't already, I just don't know why. All the latest episodes from shows you follow can be easily accessed in the What's New feed on your home screen within the Spotify app. So, what are you waiting for? Now, let's batch. This episode is brought to you by eBay Authenticity Guarantee. eBay knows that when it comes to jewelry, authenticity is the real gem. When you see the blue check mark that says Authenticity Guarantee, it means your next piece will be carefully inspired by jewelry experts and will always be worth its weight in gold. Whether you're looking to make a statement or build the perfect everyday look, eBay is making sure you get the real deal. With eBay Authenticity Guarantee, you can trust that jaw-dropping piece will always arrive jaw-droppingly real. Ensure your next purchase is the real deal. Visit ebay.com for terms. This episode is brought to you by Reese's Peanut Butter Cups. All right, it's official. I think I've discovered the ultimate coupling of all time. Like any good relationship, they really balance each other out. One is super sweet, and the other, well, they can be a little nutty sometimes. It is, of course, Reese's Peanut Butter Cups, the perfect combination of peanut butter and chocolate. So perfect, some would call it true love. Find Reese's now at a store near you. Welcome to Bachelor Party. I'm Juliet Litman. I'm joined today by a guest who I first emailed over 3 years ago trying to get her on the podcast. Didn't work out. Don't really remember why. Didn't read back our email thread. Just said, just keep it moving forward. But finally, it's happening. And today I'm joined by LoriK Krebs, who you may know as LoriK PR. Lori, welcome to Bachelor Party. This is huge. I'm so excited to be talking to you.
Oh my gosh. Thank you for having me. And you know I'm officially popping my podcast cherry with you right now.
This is huge. I mean, how many podcasts have you sat in on for your clients? I mean, probably so many, right?
Oh my gosh, dozens and dozens. But I'm at a point now that even when my clients do record podcasts, like they'll ask me after, did you listen to it? And I'm like, I can't listen. I briefly, the key points, but I just don't have the time to listen to all those podcasts, really.
Yeah.
But let me tell you, you know why I decided to do your podcast?
I do not know. I'd love to know why, because I think I was researching you. You haven't done a ton of press yourself. This seems very selective. You did a piece with Bustle almost a year ago. Then you host some Instagram lives, but you don't do a lot of press yourself.
No, I try, you know what? I try to stay behind the scenes. And especially I find when the press is asking me to do an interview or to interview me on a podcast, typically they want the tea about my clients.
Right.
And I don't know. I've never felt like I was really at a point where things were just even keel. There was not so much drama where I was comfortable to do it. But I think we're in a good place right now. I'm comfortable to do it. At first I wasn't sure, and I actually texted Rachel Lindsay.
Oh, nice.
And I said to her, hey, Julia Litman asked me, she's been asking me for the last 3 years to come on her podcast. I've always said no. What are your thoughts? And she said, do it. She's like,
that's awesome.
I trust Juliet. She's the best. You got to do it. And so Rachel gave me her blessing.
Thanks, Rach. Well, thank you for doing it. And I will say, I am interested in the tea, but not really about individual people. I'm way more interested in sort of what it's like to work with all these influencers and how much the influencer market has grown and evolved over the last few years. Because like I said, I reached out to you in 2018, which was a totally, totally different time in Bachelor Nation. It's basically a different era. And so I do want to talk about the specifics of your clients and sort of how you got into this. But I will say the reason I've been so interested in your work, and I should just say you are a publicist and you manage PR for people who appear on reality television, many Bachelor people. But I'm really interested in sort of how it all works as an industry and then an economy, and less about exposing Madison for her Instagram goof back when she was on Peter's season. So, I mean, we all make mistakes. It's fine. It happens to the best of us, Kevin Durant included. So anyway.
Listen, I'm going to be honest with you. That was the truth. It wasn't her. According to her and her camp, I mean, as far as I know, it really was not her.
Okay. She said it was her friend.
Mom
I think,
was managing. Right? Yes, they were managing her account, which is true because I remember in the past she had asked my team, to help her with it. She really wasn't Instagram savvy at that point. And, we don't typically do that. I'd say the only person I really, really help with their Instagram is Jax Taylor because he's completely Instagram illiterate. He doesn't even know how to do a swipe up. So,
it doesn't exist anymore, right? Swipe up?
Right, now it's the sticker stamp. And,
do people
conversion.
Like that more?
No, absolutely not. I feel like conversion isn't the same. The brands aren't happy with it. Before, when you have the swipe up, it's just swipe up. Right. You know what to do. Now I find the link, it blends in with all the other GIFs and text all over the place. I don't know. It's not working out for us.
That's interesting. That's the kind of thing that I'm honestly really fascinated by. Also, I do think there was like a cachet to swipe up, and as far as I know, everyone can do a link, right? Like anyone can do a link sticker. So there's not the same sort of.
I didn't know that. So even if you have 2,000 followers, you can still do the link sticker. Okay.
I think so. I will just say I've talked about this a lot on all of my pods. I have a very tortured relationship with Instagram, but I did notice recently that for a while I was in a testing group where like you couldn't send a post to your story. You had to like go into your story and like create a post and do like the reshare function. And luckily I'm back being able to just like send a post to my story because it was really annoying. Anyway. Listen,
if you ever have an Instagram issue, you come and talk to me because I'm very close friends with Facebook and Instagram. They help me out all the time.
All right. That's good to know. Let's get into it. So number one, Lori, just do a laundry list of who your clients from Bachelor Nation are so people know kind of like the sandbox we're playing in here.
All right. The list. Vanessa Grimaldi, Hannah Godwin and Dylan Barber, Madison Pruitt, Blake Moynes, Blake Horstmann. I call them Blake 1 and 2. Horstmann's 1.
Of course.
Kevin Wendt and Astrid Locke. Who am I missing? I'm missing a bunch. Oh, Abigail Herringer, Serena Pitt, Rachel Kirkconnell. All the best people.
That's a pretty great roster.
I'm definitely forgetting someone. Okay, and they're going to be upset with me.
They'll be pissed, but you'll apologize to them on your Instagram story, and it'll be fine. We'll all move forward. How did you get into working specifically with Bachelor people? Like you worked in PR before this. This is not like a brand new thing, but how did you get deep into this world? And I guess a question also I have is like, was that a pivot for you in terms of your career?
So it's pretty much a crazy story. About over 15 years ago, I moved to LA and I worked for a big PR firm there where we were representing people from film and television. I remember we were representing Eva Longoria. She was on Desperate Housewives, Mel B from the Spice Girls when she was on Dancing with the Stars. Yeah. And I worked there and eventually I moved into working in the lifestyle and brand space. So I was completely on the other side of things. And it was during that time when I was on the brand end of things where Twitter and the blogs exploded. And anybody that had a little bit of a Twitter following, it was a really big thing at that time. And I remember I was the director of PR for, do you remember the company Beyond the Rack?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, they were one of the biggest online shopping retailers. And so I remember seeing Lindsay Lohan tweeting about different brands. And I said to the CEO at the time, who was my boss, and I said, we got to try to get her and Khloe Kardashian to tweet about the business. And so through my media contacts, I knew who represented them and I reached out to their teams. At the time, it was really Kris Jenner directly. And I remember we paid Khloe, I want to say Khloe was like $10,000 for a tweet. 15 years ago.
What are we you're about to say? We're talking like 2008, basically 2007.
Yes.
Like very beginning of Twitter. That seems like a lot to me. $10,000 for a tweet in 2007. I'm like, wow, Kris Jenner always driving a hard bargain.
and Lindsay Lohan, I think, was 3,000 at the time.
Oh my
I remember
God,
that
really?
specifically. Yes.
Wow, she was already in her descent. That's too bad. I love Lindsay Lohan. I hope she's happy wherever she is.
I know. Where's she been? Anyway, so
in Europe, in the Middle East, I believe.
Really?
Well,
as
I
long
follow
as she's
Lohan.
sober and happy.
I follow Lohan Nightclub on. She's no longer affiliated, but I follow Lohan Nightclub on Instagram. That's how I kind of keep up with some of her clubs. But she's no longer affiliated, so I don't know why I do it. Anyway, so Chloe got 10K. Lindsay got 3.
Lindsay got around 3. They tweeted about the company and it exploded. It crashed the website. It was our biggest day in the history of sales that our company had at the time. And it just went viral. Like I remember TMZ picking it up, Lindsay Lohan, she's using this product from Beyond the Rack. It was everywhere. And from that moment, Juliet, it was such a pivotal moment for me in my career. I realized that traditional PR and marketing was changing. It was no longer getting, my clients or the brands at the time featured on The View or Ellen DeGeneres show or all the things that I used to do. It was really changing to influencer marketing.
Right.
And it was during that time where I started connecting with more and more celebrities and influencers on Twitter and blogs. And I want to say some of the first clients that I worked with at the time were like Bethany Frankel, Brooke Burke.
Wow.
Yeah. Even the Kardashians, even some of the Kardashians, we did like these Mother's Day gift guides with Kim and Courtney and Chloe for Kris for Mother's Day. And yeah, it's just really at that time, that's where it totally started. And from working with a lot of these celebrities and talents, I made different contacts. And like I said, I was on the brand side and I was also representing, this is going, we're moving up a few years now.
Sure.
And I was working with an app out of New York City and I was putting together an influencer campaign for them. And I thought to myself, I said, Wells Adams is perfect for this. He would be absolutely perfect. And I remember I reached out to him and we kind of just hit it off. And I want to say he was like one of the first Bachelor Nation talent or influencers, if you will, that I started working with. And we had a great relationship. We collaborated on a few things together. And ultimately, I think Wells just put in a good word for me or something.
Wow. He does seem to have a lot of clout in the community. Did you watch the show? Were you a fan?
Totally.
Okay. Have you always watched? Like, what'd you start with?
Tristan Ryan.
Oh, so you're an OG.
So I'm definitely an OG, but I did stop for a few years and I regret it because I never watched Catherine and Sean's season. I never watched JP that
and
season.
Ashley,
yeah. So I missed a few years in between and I want to say those were probably the best ones. So
those were some good years. Yeah. I would say I've talked about this quite a bit. My favorite seasons, my favorite 3 are probably 4 are Jason Mesnick. Excellent. Caitlin Bristow, Ali Fedotowsky, and Hannah Brown. I think those are my 4 favorites. I mean, I know The Bachelor in general is like more popular show, but I think those 3 Bachelorette seasons like really stood out to me. Other Bachelor seasons that are really good. I'm trying to think. Juan Pablo debacle was like kind of fun, though it was a debacle. Trying to think of who else was really great. There's the middle seasons of The Bachelor were good. Also, like Brad Womack was like also. Like,
so you've watched them all.
Basically, the early years are kind of dark for me, but I've tried to go back and like watch as much as possible. But I've watched it consistently since basically 2007, since I was like in college. So yeah, I've seen almost all of it. So
Lori,
I've been doing this for 10 years. This Bachelor podcasting, so it's both for good and for bad. So.
Well, it's funny because I started watching Tristan Ryan season. I was obviously a lot younger at that time, but I watched it with my family. And I remember my mom and dad, we loved it. It was our Monday night family get together time. And it's interesting to see the shift in the seasons because now my parents totally don't watch The Bachelor anymore.
Sure. Yeah.
It's a much younger demographic.
I don't even know how I got into it. I guess with friends, whatever. I don't know. All right. So you first started working with Wells, and that's, let's see, whose season was he on? He was on Caitlyn, maybe, or the one before? It was
Caitlyn
actually,
or JoJo I think he was JoJo's season.
It was JoJo. It was 2016.
Yeah.
I remember. He was, I remember part of his bio was he liked tacos and he was a DJ in Nashville. So,
yeah.
So you start working with Wells, and then did you already have LoriK PR at that point, or did Wells open up like a business stream for you?
I already had LoriK PR, but like I said, I was representing more of the brand side of things and putting together influencer programs for them.
Oh, interesting. And so then did you continue to do both, like both brand and influencer and like meld them together? Do you still work with brands?
I try not to because it gets a little bit too messy. Yeah.
Yeah.
But there are times, if I have a close relationship with the brand and they want it, they want me to help them with an influencer program or some social media marketing, I may direct them to someone else on my team or somebody else that I know.
Interesting. So how big is your company? How many people do you have?
Oh my gosh, we're small. I want to say like 5 people. I have a couple of people. Yeah.
I think that's still, I think probably like the online community that's like hyper aware of LoriK PR, I bet would think it's like just you, like just like pulling all the strings. So I think that's pretty interesting. And like, what was sort of, you said Lindsay and Chloe's sort of moment, with Beyond the Rack was sort of a breakthrough, like in your kind of tracking of this influencer industry and how it collided with Bachelor Nation. Like, what are some of the other like really key moments of the last few years where you're like, wow, this is a major industry and like, this is a big deal?
I think that's such a good question. I just see the evolution has changed so much in terms of social media now. Mm-hmm. Whereas before it was such a monumental thing or so new to see somebody with a huge, large following. Now it's like every second person has, a few 100,000 followers, 1 million followers. It's not new. But for the brands, this is the big shift for the brands that I've seen throughout the years. Earlier, brands would just be looking for people that had large followings to work with and to collaborate with. Now, it's not about the following because, like I said, everybody has a big following. It's the engagement. It's their engagement. So engagement meaning how many people are interacting with their posts, how many are viewing their stories, how many are actually clicking on the links that they're promoting. And so that's been an interesting shift to see. Because I know ultimately, like people say, they think that a lot of people go on Bachelor or all these reality shows to become an influencer after all this. And, my answer to that would be, I think anybody going on television is looking for a little bit of fame or notoriety, right? Like, why else are you going?
You have to be comfortable. Yeah. I always say there's a bit of exhibitionism in all of these people. So
yeah, but I do think, they go on, it is a very cool experience, especially The Bachelor before COVID. You get to travel to all these different countries. You get to meet so many people. I've also seen the progression of some of these contestants who I've known before they've gone on the show where they've grown so much.
Like who? Like who's an example of that?
Blake Horstmann, totally.
He's been through so many up and downs, especially on his social media. Blake is someone who, when he went on the show on Becca's season, he was really sweet. Thought he was really cute. I interviewed him right after that. It was actually like a really lovely interview. It was in December of 2018. So maybe you were working with him. And I can't believe it was 3 years ago. He had come very early on a Saturday morning to our studio. He had been at like the Jingle Ball of LA the night before with like some contest winner. He was really sweet. I really liked Blake. And I think like watching him over the last couple of years, I still really like Blake. It definitely seems like someone who has had a lot of success and like apparently found his calling in being a DJ. But also like definitely on social media too much. Like when I think about what happened with him in Paradise with Caitlyn 2 years ago, it's like, you could see on the show and then in his response after, like so much of it felt like it was dictated, or not dictated, but like a lot of the calculus was like, how is this being received and how do I set the record straight? And like the answer and sort of like the answer to both of those questions lied within Instagram. And that's sort of like, that's a double-edged sword, right? Of like it's an income, it's power, it's influence, but then it's also like, I think people are totally tormented by it. Like, and in working with someone like Blake, how do you work with them to kind of like keep them grounded essentially and like not care too much about their engagement so that it remains like authentic and whatnot? And I'm also just curious as a PR professional what you thought about that that whole saga. Did you ever work with Kaylin?
No.
That's
no,
good.
I never worked with Kaylin.
Good.
No.
That'd be super awkward.
But I did work with Dylan and Hannah.
Oh, okay.
During that season with the whole Blake triangle. So that was fun. Yeah. That was a really difficult time. I want to say one of the hardest times, in my professional life, especially witnessing someone, suffer so much emotionally, mentally, physically, the way that Blake did.
It was, the physical part was really apparent, even on TV. I was like, oh, this person's not in a good place. And like, he messed up, but I felt like worried for him at the time.
Yeah, so did I. I remember that it was Crystal's wedding during that season. And I had clients that were going just for the wedding. And I remember Kevin and Astrid were going. And I said, tell Blake to leave. Please tell him to just come home. Like, I was hearing these horror stories of what was going on. And again, you have to understand, yes, I'm a publicist, but at the end of the day, I'm a human being too. And my clients they're like family to me. And I care about them for them first and foremost. Forget about professionally. That's secondary to me, really. And I knew that Blake was really suffering. Down there. And I knew that it was just going to get worse and worse for him. So I wasn't understanding why was he continuing to stay, But yeah, that was a very difficult time. I know how he handled it with, releasing the text messages and everything like you were insinuating. People don't realize that just because you're somebody's publicist doesn't necessarily mean that the client always listens to you. It's always the publicist is blamed, but they don't really understand that, I've given advice and professional suggestions, to my clients, many of them, not just from Bachelor, from Vanderpump, from all other shows. It's 50-50 whether they actually listen or not. And at the end of the day, they're their own person. I'd say with Blake, listen, I didn't tell him to do it. I didn't tell him not to do it. I remember saying to him that releasing the text isn't going to fix things. Right. It's not going to fix things. But he felt, and I know that he spoke a lot with other people in Bachelor Nation, and, they also understood that his hands were tied. And I think the biggest thing for Blake was that it was the whole silencing thing that bothered him the most. And I mean, his mom at the time was getting death threats to her school. He was really destroyed by it. I remember. I feel like he had to say something. Yeah. And it's definitely, it sucked for Kaylin. There's no question about that. I think what he did really sucked for her. I think it's easier to feel at this point with hindsight and like knowing where everything stands now. It's kind of easy to like, just sort of be like, everyone messed up. Let's move on. Cause Kaylin's obviously happy. Blake seems like he's doing better. I don't know, but it definitely, like, the social media aspect of it to me, I brought that up because it was such like a major moment where Blake has this platform that he can use for, building out being an influencer, but you have to balance that with also being authentic and who you are. And like part of that for him was, being able to clear the air. So it was just a really, that was such a wild moment. I hope he's doing better. It was awful. I felt for her too. I felt for Kaylin too.
Yeah. Like you said, I mean, I think if you're human, you feel for all people involved. So I get it. And I guess that sort of also leads me to like, when you work with folks, what are the types of things that, like, what kind of work do you recommend for them? Because I assume someone like Madison, who doesn't seem that interested from my vantage point of going back on any of these shows anytime soon, might take certain opportunities that someone like Serena Pitt, who has now been on 2 shows and is sort of in a highly publicized Bachelor Nation relationship, like might be positioning herself a little bit differently. So how do you work with clients to determine like what is a good fit for them and how they should be moving their career forward and like what jobs to take on essentially?
So I always, before I take on a client, before I decide, is this a good fit for both of us to work together, I try to find out what their intentions are. What are they looking to do? How are they looking to use their platform? What are their interests? What are their likes? What are their dislikes? Where do they see themselves going? And ultimately, if I feel like I could help them, if my agency could help them and, our values align, then I will take them on as a client. Someone like Madison, she wasn't interested in positioning herself, just going on influencer trips and all those things. She was, of course, she loves fashion and she loves beauty. She's a real girl's girl like that too, but she wanted to make a difference in terms of the community of her church and her faith. She's an incredible public speaker, motivational speaker. So that was something that, we had talked about. And in terms of where we positioned her, some of the brands that she works with, some of the charity organizations that she's affiliated with. Yeah.
Cool. Interesting. And then someone like Serena, like, I obviously she didn't know before she went on The Bachelor or Bachelor in Paradise that she'd end up with Joe. But how does being in a relationship change what you do with your social media? Because obviously Dylan and Hannah, I feel like part of their, and I actually don't want to assume that what I see on social media is who they are in person. But I would say from my perspective, Dylan and Hannah, their relationship is part of their respective personas online, which makes sense. It's what they're known for to a lot of the public. But so like, how does being in a Bachelor relationship change what you can do professionally?
To be honest, it actually doesn't. I'd say the only thing, and it's funny because, I'll hear like on Reddit stuff like, oh, LoriK PR tried to fix these 2 people up because she wants the couples together. Like it really makes no difference, to be honest.
It's like you're a Paradise producer behind the scenes.
Yeah, definitely not. But like someone, for instance, Hannah Godwin, loved Dylan and all, but whether she was with him or not with him, she'd still be, the entity she is today, the influencer she is today on social media.
Yeah.
She does, so I'd say the only realistic thing that the Bachelor couples do, it keeps the engagement high. Right?
But yeah. I also think it benefits the men more than the women because Hannah is really gifted at the dances and she's very cute and like clearly has fun with like all the TikTok trends. And I feel like Dylan is the beneficiary of Hannah being good at the medium and like really getting it. Whereas I don't think that he necessarily like, not saying he detracts from her social media at all, but I just feel like he benefits from her prowess on these platforms basically.
Absolutely. The guys definitely benefit more from the girls in the relationship. Hands down.
Interesting. This episode is brought to you by eBay Authenticity Guarantee. eBay knows that when it comes to jewelry, authenticity is the real gem. When you see the blue check mark that says Authenticity Guarantee, it means your next piece will be carefully inspired by jewelry experts and will always be worth its weight in gold. Whether you're looking to make a statement or build the perfect everyday look, eBay is making sure you get the real deal. With eBay Authenticity Guarantee, you can trust that jaw-dropping piece will always arrive jaw-droppingly real. Ensure your next purchase is the real deal. Visit ebay.com for terms. This episode is brought to you by Visible. Maybe you've already let your New Year's resolution slip. We all have, but you can still make a 2 year's resolution with Visible. Right now, you can get a one-line wireless plan from Visible for just $20 per month for 24 months. 24 months is basically 4 Bachelor seasons. That could be 4 engagements, 4 broken engagements. So many other couples we didn't see coming. It's really an eternity in Bachelor Nation. And that's unlimited 5G data powered by Verizon with no annual contracts. Switch now at Visible.com and use the code VISIBLE24. Don't miss out. Offer ends January 31st. New members only. Promotional rate with service on the Visible plan. For additional terms and network management practices, see Visible.com.
This episode is brought to you by State Farm. You might say all kinds of stuff when things go wrong, but these are the words you really need to remember. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. They've got options to fit your unique insurance needs, meaning you can talk to your agent to choose the coverage you need. Have coverage options to protect the things you value most. File a claim right on the State Farm mobile app and even reach a real person when you need to talk to someone. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
What was the pandemic like? As soon as the shutdown happened and the trip stopped and like there were sort of other things, everything came to a halt. I was really curious, like what was like April and May 2020 like for your clients? Like how did it affect them? It seemed horrible.
It was actually the busiest time for all of us. Yeah.
Wow.
And I feel badly saying that because I know how many companies and people suffered due to the pandemic. Even my own husband, his company was having a really rough time. But in terms of my clients and our business, it was never busier because I think everybody at that time was on social media, was online. They were online shopping, or they were, everything at that time was, they're at home. There was nothing else to do. So all the brands really dedicated a lot of their marketing budgets, I guess, during that time to influencer marketing. And it was the busiest time. In terms of PR, that was obviously a very big shift because we were no longer able to do the photo shoots in person.
Right.
A lot of photo shoots were on Zoom.
Right.
I still don't understand how they got amazing content and photos, but they did. They managed it. Even some people were on covers from Zoom shoots. A lot of meetings were on Zoom. All of the media, after shows were all done also on Zoom. So press and media interviews really shifted in that sense.
Well, for us, it's been great because I'm like, oh, cool. You can do you can do this podcast from wherever you are. Just, if you've got an internet connection or a phone line, we could do it. So that part's been cool. And I hope doesn't change. I don't think it will, because I think everyone likes the sort of flexibility of press now, being able to do interviews from wherever. It seems like everyone's happy. It benefits everyone.
A little too much. I contacted Access Hollywood yesterday to, they're going to be interviewing one of my clients, and I was expecting, I said, okay, what time should we show in studio? And they're like, well, no, Zoom. And I'm like, but why Zoom? Like, we're open already. I think people are getting a little, they're comfortable now with their whole Zoom setup and it's working for everybody. But I don't know. It takes away from the in-person.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. There's you easily forget it when you're home all the time. But then when you're like actually around people, you're like, oh, this is magical. Humans are supposed to connect with each other. It's not just supposed to be you wherever you are, just alone. I feel like you are something of a mythical figure on Bachelor Reddit and whatnot. And I'm curious, like, what's the most egregious false rumor that you've come across about you and also about one of your clients something that just like made you laugh? It was so stupid.
Oh my gosh. I would say anytime they accuse me, they think I'm this publicist, guru, mastermind, like I'm making up these stories to get my clients into the press. And it's it's not true. Like maybe that was PR years and years and decades ago. But PR today is really, if my client wrote a book, we're getting them publicity and contacting the different media outlets.
Right.
I'm not staging these opportunities where paparazzi are coming to a certain spot at this time and taking a photo of them. That's not the type of PR that I do. So I find that interesting. And also, like I said before, when they think that I'm this mastermind behind trying to set my clients up on The Bachelor or something like that. And it's just, no, that doesn't exist. People are going to slide into whoever's DMs that they do. These are young 20-year-old kids. I'm not doing anything. I'm really, really not. So, yeah.
For anyone who would want to go on the show, like, what do you think is important to know beforehand in terms of because I think I think there's nothing wrong with going on the show and wanting to become an influencer or getting to brand marketing or have a platform. Like, that's just sort of the name of the game. And also most people want attention on social media. That's why they participate. So I guess like, what do you think people should know before they go into it?
A couple things. Like going into the interview, I would say that they just really need to be themselves.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, these producers, they're amazing at their job. They can pick up on, someone that's not being truthful instantly. So just be yourself, be honest, talk about, what I would, if I were going on, saying how you're really ready for a real relationship, you're ready for engagement. They really want people that are sincere, that ultimately want to end an engagement, right?
Mm-hmm.
I would also say that when you go on a show like The Bachelor, you're always mic'd. Always. They're always filming you. So when you think you're not mic'd or you think you're not being filmed, like last night's episode with Jamie when he took the producer to the side. He thought, okay, the rose ceremony was over. The little cocktail that they had was over. And he just pulled his producer to the side and chatted with her. So yeah, when you're on camera, you're on camera 24/7. There's cameras in the trees. There's cameras, in every little corner. So be smart.
Oh my God. What are you thinking of this season so far? Are you enjoying it?
I really am.
Michelle's
really,
awesome.
really am. I adore her. I find her so real. And I don't know, she's just very classy. And I appreciate that she's calling out the guys right away. There's nobody that's staying on just for the sake of drama. Like that guy on night one who wrote that Bachelor notebook.
Yeah. His name was Ryan, I believe.
Right. So I was expecting that, okay, he was at least going to stay on for another 3 more episodes. Right.
Yeah. Same with Jamie, right? You're like, oh, she's probably going to keep him, even though he's clearly like a jerk. I just think he seemed like not good boyfriend material. He wasn't very nice, saying she was having the spring break mentality. That's so rude.
So, and I mean, like, where's he even getting that from? She's so classy. She's I don't know. She's lovely. I love her.
Can you reveal if you're working with anyone from this cast?
No, I'm not.
When you watch, do you ever feel like, I want to reach out to that person? They seem like they've got a great personality.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's some seasons that I of course, with social media today and spoilers, you hear right after filming, who makes it far and everything, and with Reality Steve. But
I try to avoid. I don't have any spoilers on this season, so don't tell me any.
Really? How do you avoid?
Except for Clayton.
It's everywhere.
Bachelor. I don't read anything marked spoiler on Bachelor Reddit. I don't follow Reality Steve. I mute. I follow some of the Bachelor accounts on Instagram, like Bachelor Nation Scoop or whatever, but I mute them so that I don't accidentally look at their stories. I don't know. It's hard to do the podcast knowing what's going to happen, because then you're just sort of lying or hedging, be like, oh, I think this, I think that. So
that's true.
I really try to avoid it. And for our pods that we do here for scripted shows as well, people who, you often get screeners. You can get them all at the same time or whatever. We recommend that for all of our hosts, you watch one at a time, because it's very hard to parse what the audience knows versus what you know. So anyway, spoilers are just bad for podcasting.
Okay, so can I ask you a question, since you are not spoiled this season? Who do you think she ends up with?
That's a good question. I don't think it's Joe. I know he seems like the front runner right now, but I've been saying that I think that he self-eliminates or just doesn't work out. I think he seems very, very shy. And I think that because he's so shy, he won't give her the validation that she needs. I feel like there won't be the kind of explicit, yes, let's do it, because that's just maybe not his personality. Nothing against him, but I don't see that working out. So I'm eliminating him, even though he's probably seems like the front runner right now. We love Nate here on this podcast, and she seems to have a good connection with him. I feel weirdly Nate, Rick, and Brandon are kind of the 3 who I can remember the most, and as a result probably go far, because I wouldn't really be able to remember them as being genuine, not just being wacky. So I think that it probably will come down to Brandon and Nate.
Same. That was my final 2. Same. She has such a great connection with them, with both of them.
Brandon's embarrassed himself in very endearing ways, and it seems like she has really fallen for that, and I think that's really sweet. And then I actually said this a couple days ago. Nate gives me Tyler Cameron vibes in terms of his confidence and like just sort of like self-assuredness in the way that he also talks to Michelle. Like I think that he has a very similar approach. I don't think he's similar to Tyler except for like in his approach to the show. It's just, I have to say this every time I bring up Tyler. I'm obsessed with him. I love him. Great guy.
Have you met him?
Yeah, a bunch of times.
Have you met him? Okay.
Yeah. He's
it's
really
so funny
nice.
because I find Tyler in person. I mean, on his Instagram, like Jesus, he's a beautiful specimen, sexy, so hot. But in person, he's just such a normal, like teddy bear,
he's
right?
So nice. It's weird. So confusing. Why are you so nice? It's been a bit for, over 2 years that I'm obsessed with Tyler, except that it's not really a bit. It's a bit in that, like, I definitely talk about it a lot on the pod, but because I do know him, I'm not actually obsessed with him. I'm not like, 15-year-old, like posters in my bedroom or whatever. But, I just think he's, that season was lightning in a bottle. Like that season had everything sort of like just kind of worked, and it was dynamite. Also, for me, I didn't cover a couple of the episodes because I was on leave, and so I also like got to enjoy it in a different way. So I think that's one of the reasons why I like always talk about it a lot. But anyway, that's Brandon and Nate, who I think she seems most excited about. I think Jamie would have gone far if he hadn't blatantly lied to her and then like thrown everyone under the bus. That was a bizarre turn of events. I can't believe it.
So I saw the sleuthers, or the trolls, if you want to call them, talking a lot about that Jamie is not the age he's saying he is.
Well, I think he seems older. Is that what other people are saying? Yeah, he looks older. Yeah.
I mean, I feel badly saying that, but even the way he carries himself, he seems older. It's possible.
Yeah. I also agree. I said this again the other day. I agreed with him when he was like, not the best group of guys. Like when he was like, I thought it'd be a better pool. There's a lot of sweethearts here who I'm just like, no one who seems like particularly toxic except for Jamie. But I understood what he was saying. He does carry himself like quite differently than like Will or Peter or whatever. So I understood that. But I think that he is less than truthful. Like apparently his company is really just like an air purifier that like doesn't work. There's this website now called bachelorjobs.com where
my gosh,
these people sleuth into like what everyone's actual job is, and his is pretty much BS. So he also had some pretty ugly tweets from like his early 20s. So like 10 years ago.
Really?
So, yeah.
But his childhood story really touched me. Like I really liked him that first night.
Yeah. It was really moving. And I thought the way he talked about it was really composed. And, that's a good thing about this though, is like Jamie's complicated. He's not just like an evil villain. There's more layers to him, which is human. So I like the season because I feel like they're getting back to like character development, which has really been lacking.
Totally.
And I'm happy about that.
Can I also ask you one other thing?
Of course.
I'm laughing like I'm turning into the interview right now, but I'm so interested about what you do also and your perspective on things. Clayton, that's his name. Clayton becoming the next Bachelor. Does he not remind you exactly of Colton, but his name is Clayton? They look the same too.
I think Clayton looks like a pile of clay. I think that his name is so appropriate. I can't see past it.
You didn't just say that.
Did you ever work with Colton?
No, I've never worked with him, but I've talked with him a few times.
I always felt there was something about Colton that he seemed uncomfortable in a way. I always thought that he seemed like the weight of the experience took its toll on him. Obviously it did. He, left the set and tried to end the show. And so when he came out, I thought that some of the struggle we saw happening on TV probably must have been tied to just like his general identity and sort of his sexual identity. And so I don't see the same kind of active inner struggle on the face of Clayton. And then maybe that's like a, a hindsight view, but I did always feel with Colton that we weren't necessarily getting his full story. And so with Clayton, he just seems like really plain. And so like, I think on paper, he's quite similar to Colton, and like his physical build is very similar, but like, I haven't seen anything in 3 episodes that I'm like, wow, Clayton should be the Bachelor. So I assume we'll be getting that. Maybe he really connected with the producers and they like think that they'll be able to bring that out. I heard they're full on traveling for the next season. So I do think it'll be a good season, kind of like back to form. So I don't know. Well, it'll be interesting. What do you think about Clayton so far?
I don't know Clayton. Like, have you seen anything of Clayton?
He just did a lot of talking this week, and I think they're trying to like ramp up our exposure to him as a result.
I'm expecting to see something big come out of Clayton where we're like, this is why they made him the Bachelor.
Yeah, maybe. He kind of reminds me of Jesse Palmer in a way. Like I saw the picture of them standing next to each other and I was like, Jesse Palmer seems like Clayton in 20 years. I'm excited about Jesse Palmer. I one of my colleagues, Amelia, who also recaps The Bachelor on the Bachelor Party Instagram and on the Ringer reality TV podcast, is like the world's biggest Jesse Palmer fan. Like she watched the surfing show. She watches his holiday baking show. She's like, she is a tough judge and she's really excited. So I'm going to be excited as well. So I think it's good. The show needs like a real host. It needs like a sort of like a center. And I think that's been lacking, though Michelle, I think, does that really well so far this season. So do you work with Caitlin or Tayshia?
I don't work with Tayshia. I work with Jason Tardik. I've worked with him for years. Yeah. But
he's really nice. He's been on my pod a few times.
Yeah, he's great. And, you know, through Jason, I know Caitlin. We work together a little bit here and there, but she has her own team. She has her own empire there going on.
Totally. I know. She got the scrunchies. I have a scrunchie on my wrist, not one of hers.
Yes.
But, well, so when Jason wants to start a podcast, his financial podcast, which I think is a cool idea, does he talk to you about that? Like, do you guys talk about what are the opportunities that could come with it, or do you help him position it? Like, what's your role in someone like Jason starting?
No, not for Jason. He really, since his restart YouTube, he has like a whole other team too in that realm. Yeah. So I wouldn't be dealing with him.
Gotcha. Interesting. That's really like, what do you think are the next opportunities for your clients? Like what, I mean, you can't give away any proprietary secrets, but like, what do you think, where do you think this space is going? Like from how it's evolved since that first Khloe Kardashian tweet to now, like, what do you think the main change has been? And like, where is it going next?
I just think, you know, I don't think Instagram is going anywhere anytime soon. Even though all the kids love TikTok now, to me, it's not the same as Instagram whatsoever. Mm-hmm. I just think we're seeing now larger companies now encompassing influencer marketing that before it was the Vanity Planets, the smaller brands that you'd see, you know, all these influencers promote a lot. But now, I mean, some of the biggest companies are working with these influencers from Bachelor Nation, you know, that you can't even imagine. Victoria's Secret, Pepsi, Macy's.
Yeah.
It's taking on a life of its own. And I think it's just going to get bigger and bigger. I also have a client, I'm not going to say who, but that's going on another reality show.
Oh, interesting.
And you guys won't believe it. Yeah.
Interesting. I'm going to ask you about that offline because I have a guess. I just have to ask about Jackson Brittany as a Vanderpump fan. Mm-hmm. First of all, do you still watch the show?
Not as actively, not weekly. I'll record it and then I'll marathon like a few on the weekend. But
the season's horrible. Yeah. It's just a horrible season.
Is it?
I think it's really bad. I find it unbearable and just weird.
Well, yeah, because Jax Taylor's not on it, and he's the best television.
Yeah,
Stassi too. Great.
Yes, both. You know, problematic to say the least, and also good TV. It's a narrative problem, and like James doesn't do it for me. What's it like working with Jackson Brittany, being in the Bravo world versus the Bachelor people who are in like the ABC world? Like they're two distinct closed entities. So like I'm just curious, what's the difference between Bravo celebrities and Bachelor Nation?
So the Bachelor people really, I want to say, go from a normal quote unquote person to overnight stardom, really.
Right.
In one season. And whereas someone like Jax Taylor, he's been in this industry and he's been filming this show for 8 years.
Right.
So he's just, I want to say he's not as affected by it. You know, he's used to it. So things don't get to him the same way that someone from Bachelor Nation, you know, the trolls, for example.
Yeah.
Right. the trolls that say some horrible things about some Bachelor people, you know, it really does hurt them, and it gets to them because it's new to them. They're not used to that. Jax Taylor, I mean, anybody could say anything about him. There's no sweat off his back. He's just,
that seems slightly Jax specific. He's such what a character. What a character.
No, but in real life, he's not. In real life, he's not. I mean, he's a character, but not what you're thinking at all.
Like, what's like a Jax fact that would surprise me?
He's just a real homebody. He's a real homebody, and he's a real family man. And
how's Cruz doing?
Listen, I have 2 kids. And I will say, Cruz is the cutest baby I've ever seen in my entire life. And I keep saying to them, I said, I don't understand how you had this. He's the happiest, sweetest. I babysat him. I was the first person to ever babysit Cruz.
Oh my God.
You know. Yeah.
Wow.
And I was down in LA and I needed them to go do press. And last minute, the press outlet told me that I wasn't able to come because of COVID. They just had to test. Yeah, they had to do the COVID test for Jax and Brittany, and they weren't allowed to bring a representative. And so I said, listen, like, they were going to bring Cruz. I said, why bring Cruz with you? Let me just babysit him. And they were like, well, you're the first person, because, you know, they don't have family out there, and they do not trust a nanny to babysit Cruz. They do not have help. They do it all by themselves. And so I babysat Cruz. This baby, he slept the entire time. And when he was up for 5 minutes, he's smiling and he's happy and he's looking at you. He's just, I don't know how Jax Taylor gave birth to that. I really don't.
Oh man, that's interesting. Well, Lori, thank you so much for joining me. Hope this was not a traumatizing experience since it was your first podcast.
No, it was a great experience. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. It's been really cool watching your career and sort of just tracking all the work you're doing and the growing influence. So it's been really cool. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you to Erika Cervantes for producing this episode. Callie and I will be back on Tuesday, and looking forward to this Bachelor season carrying on. Thanks so much, everyone. Have a great weekend.